Well, my name is Deepa Willingham, and I have had several careers, but I started my professional life as a graduate student, then teaching assistant while I was going through graduate school. Then I became a professor, and finally, professionally, I became an administrator in the hospital industry. It is an interesting question. I am from India, and I did my undergraduate in India. And my father was a professor and a president of a college, and he wanted one of his children to go abroad for higher studies. And when we were young, both my brothers are very brilliant, but when they were young, they were more into sports, and I was more into studying. So ended up, I had the results to come to the United States. So one day, my parents put me on a plane and sent me to United States for graduate school after I finished my undergraduate there. Actually, I didn't realize I wanted to do that. This was my parents who sent me here. But once I got here, I majored in biology and did my master's in Ohio, a PhD work in Wisconsin, and that's how I became a biologist. First of all, if you are going to be a professor, you need some advanced degrees. You have to do your college and graduate school. And if you're going to have being a professor as your career, you should have the passion for teaching and passion for the subject that you're teaching, so that you can motivate others to go into your field or go into the profession of teaching, which is a very good profession. If you want to be a professor, as I mentioned before, you need to do your graduate degrees, and if you want to teach at the college level, you need to have your PhD. And if you want to teach at the high school level, you can become with a bachelor's degree and a degree in education, but also master's degree would be very helpful. As I said, I have had several careers. Uh, as a professor, I loved the fact that I was able to turn on students on the subject that I was teaching. It brings me to an interesting experience I had when I was doing my PhD work. During summers, I wanted to augment my income, and I taught at a federally funded program called Head Start among the very inner city school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The program was to take the brightest juniors and seniors from the inner city schools, and during a summer intensive course, teach them the concept of learning and concept of going to school regularly, doing homework, etc., and help them, prepare them so that they could graduate from high school. And then if they graduated from high school, University of Wisconsin had a 4-year scholarship for them. So it was interesting for me to teach biology, because when in biology you teach from unicellular organism to multicellular organism. These young kids, they were all in puberty and didn't realize what was happening. So I designed a course from starting with the human endocrine system and then going backwards. And what was most gratifying is that I was able to, these learners that were not very dedicated to education, they were totally turned on to education, and most of my students graduated from high school, and 75% of them graduated from University of Wisconsin in 4 years. That was the most highlight of my teaching career. The long hours. Classroom is just a small amount of the time. uh, that you spend. Any good teacher, whether it's high school, middle school, primary school, or college, there is a lot of work outside of the school classroom that people don't realize how much that work is. Find your passion and then develop that passion into a career. So your passion could be anything. Mine was biology. Your passion could be art. Your passion could be humanitarian work. Your passion could be helping the poor, underprivileged. Whatever your passion is, follow your passion with utter dedication. Well, when I was in the teaching field, the workday was very variable. Depending on what I was trying to achieve, workday could be anywhere from 8 to 14 hours, depending on what I was doing. Sometimes whole weekend, because I would take students on field trips and so on and so forth. Anywhere from 50 to 60 hours per week. No, I think the field of biology is growing, particularly with regard to genetics. There's a lot of advances have been made in mapping DNA, developing the genome, understanding the gene location and each gene function. So it's a very exciting field to be in right now. If I was doing it, I would probably be more into genetics than molecular biology, which is what I did my PhD work in. It's an interesting question. I don't know whether teaching is valued in our society as much as it ought to be. Okay, teachers should be good, better pay in my view, and what they do to shape young and very young and young adult way of thinking and way of life and so on. It's a very valuable career. I think it's a very noble profession. Anybody considering going into it, if you want to change humanity, teachers have a lot of clout in achieving that. Yeah, I don't think they, as I said, I don't think they are appreciated for what they are able to do and what the value of their profession. As much as we value, for example, a physician or a businessman, teachers really achieve a lot for society. Good teachers are very, very valuable for our society. Yeah, this is where I think I'm going to go away with the tenor of some of your questions. I retired from hospital administration position in 1987, and then I served on the Santa Barbara County grand jury for a year, and then people wanted me to run for County Board of Supervisors, which did not interest me. So as I left my so-called professional job, I decided, well, what am I going to do now? I started get into humanitarian work. Initially, I worked with an organization out of Portland and did many humanitarian trips to Mexico, Honduras, etc. And then in 2001, I was asked to join Rotary by one of my neighbors. And so I am active member of a local Rotary club. And through Rotary, let me back up. When I became 60, it really bothered me. In that 40 didn't bother me, 50 didn't bother me, but 60 really bothered me. And going even further back, you as an American child, you probably were raised here with your mother telling you, finish the food on your plate because there are starving children in Africa, right? I was raised with my mother telling me, finish the food on your plate with the starving children outside the window, and they were. So as I was growing up and going to a fancy school in the city of Calcutta, I saw those children. They had nothing. And as a little child, I would always tell myself, when I grow up, I am going to take care of children like that. Except that idea never materialized till I was 60. 40 didn't bother me, 50 didn't bother me, 60 really bothered me. I said I had lived on this planet for 60 years and I hadn't done anything to make the planet a better place. So I thought of my childhood dream, and I spoke to my family and I spoke to my Rotary Club, and I decided that I would start a school for girls because in my research I found out girls around the world were in bad shape. So both my family and my Rotary Club said if I wanted to do this, they would back me up. And so I started an organization called PACE Universal. PACE stands for Promise of Assurance to Children Everywhere. And I started to set up a school, and I found a village where they were selling girls as young as 5 and 6 for prostitution. And I decided I would do it there to stop such atrocity. And so I began with a very humble beginning with a tin shack, with the idea that I would only do a school for 25 girls. I had to talk the parents into coming to school, but within 6 months we had 80 girls, and now that was in 2003. In 2018, it has become a major hub, so much so the Rotary world is trying to duplicate the model that my family and with the help of my Rotary Club, we have been able to create. And I am now going around all over the world talking about the value of educating girls and women, and also how we as human beings have to stop such atrocity as human trafficking. Selling of girls and boys and women is not an acceptable phenomenon that should be accepted as a norm, and that's what's happening in the world. And so PACE Universal is now engaged in spreading the message of this atrocity and doing everything possible so we can stop it. And so you young people, if you are going to inherit this planet, and currently in the planet 62 million girls are not allowed to go to school, and human trafficking is growing faster than any other organized crime. So find out about it and get involved, because you're going to inherit the planet. You need to be involved so that such atrocity can be stopped. Yes, I want to say I believe it is young people who are going to be listening to this video. Go to paceuniversal.org website. Contact your local Rotary Club. I frequently take young people to go visit the school. Go make the trip with me, learn firsthand what extreme poverty is all about. To me, last year in Rotary World, I served as the Peace Builder Club chair for the Rotary District here. And when the governor asked me to do this, I told him what my definition of peace is. Peace is not just the lack of war. Peace is for all of us to create a lack of poverty, a lack of non-human condition, a lack of hopelessness, and lack of injustice. If we can create that, and you need to be involved in creating that so that you can have a peaceful life, peaceful planet for yourself, for your family, and for your children and grandchildren. So be involved, ask questions. Don't take norm as a norm.